Namaste.
Namaste.
This is Shri Adinarayanan and myself, Smrithi Adinarayanan, and we are founders of Anaadi Foundation. And our ashram is located near Payani in Tamil Nadu. And for the past 4 to 5 years, we've been spending quite some time taking the message of Sanatana Dharma, especially to the youth of the country, and of course the youth of other nations as well. And he had the good fortune of spending more than 150 days in Mauna. And whatever Anaadi Foundation is offering is inspiration from the sadhana that both of us have been fortunate to undertake. And it was our Guru's message that we need to inspire the youth of the country. And we've been trying our bit to do that part.
So when we say Bharata, we look at it in terms of Bha is the light of liberating knowledge. And Rata is the inclination towards that, seeking that light of knowledge. That's why Bharata is that land where we are oriented and inclined towards pursuing that light of knowledge that helps us lead a good life, one that is of benefit to oneself and everybody around us. And also that which leads us towards freeing ourselves, liberating ourselves. So that is the power of what we look at as Bharatiya Parampara. And being able to get a hang of it is very critical. And that's where we realized early on that our educational process needs to also give us the content by which we develop Shraddha in the Bharatiya Parampara. And if that happens, then there is so much that one can learn and integrate in one's life. And there would be so much clarity that awakens in oneself, by which one can lead a glorious life. Life is beautiful. But apparently for many people, it's not so in their perception. And hence this Bharatiya Parampara, helping us access the vast heritage and knowledge that is inherent in the Bharatiya Samskriti and Parampara, becomes very, one is critical. Also, there's a lot of fun approaching it because there's a lot of aha moments when one approaches these.
So today we're here to talk about Mahabharata. It's something that is very close to our heart. And in fact, our ashram is located in an area called Aivarmalai. And the local legend is that Aivar refers to the Pancha Pandavas. And we also have a Draupadi Amman temple near the ashram. So we're always fortunate to, get the blessings of Draupadi Amma and also narrate the Mahabharata to a lot of people. So here we are today to look at some aspects of the Mahabharata that is of relevance to the youth in general, specifically, but to everybody in general, and to current times as well. Yeah. So that's why it's called Mahabharata Analysis.
Yeah.
So we'll do some analysis today.
So let us start with an invocation. Om Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. An invocation is a means, just like we set the right or appropriate physical environment. An invocation is a means of setting the right inner environment. Our attitudes, our alignment also needs to be set. It's like if one needs to lead a happy life, then one definitely needs to set the inner alignment right. Otherwise, a misaligned inner environment can create quite a different response or experience. So that's where we bow down to Rishi Narayana and Rishi Nara, who incarnated as Bhagavan Shri Krishna and Arjuna for the protection of Dharma. And we bow down to Devi Saraswati, who is the governing intelligence of knowledge and learning. And we bow down to Rishi Vyasa for giving us this wonderful Jaya. And Jaya means victory or success. So the original name of Mahabharata is Jaya, which means success, victory. It actually gives us victory. It gives us success. Because no matter what we do, we always seek to be successful. Even in the spiritual endeavor, people aspire for spiritual success, which is self-realization. Similarly, in the endeavor of dharma, people aspire for success in dharma. So that's where the central message, I think, becomes very relevant here.
So the central message of the Mahabharata is Dharmo Rakshati Rakshita. And it's so wonderfully said because whoever protects dharma, then dharma protects them. That seems to be the core message of the Mahabharata. But how does this happen?
Yeah, it might seem, in fact, a little quixotic, that dharma has to be protected. Come on. But if you look at it, we are using this. I clearly remember, for example, I had a course in my engineering days, which was called wireless communication. There I learned mobile telephony, how do mobile networks work, and so on. And at that time, we had the inklings of a mobile phone. Definitely not a smartphone as we have now. And very interestingly, as things have evolved, now those phones have vanished, maybe from the face of earth. I don't know where they have gone. There is just a dramatic way of saying that any piece of creation that we look at, so there can be two types of creation. One is objective material creation, and another is subjective mental creation. That is subtler. So any type of creation has, we need to understand that it is not automatic, right? It is a healthy interaction that is happening where there is the material component and there is the intelligent component. So you have both of these working together to create creation. So the mobile phone did not fall down from just nowhere. It was created, and there so much of human knowledge had to be worked upon and evolved in the past few centuries for us to have this technology that we are using right now.
And in fact, if you see, even in today's times, if the vaccine has to protect us, it means that somebody has to protect the process of the vaccination, right?
Yeah.
So there are leaders, there is a governance structure, citizens are taking responsibility for it. Only when we maintain that structure can the vaccine be effective in protecting us.
Exactly.
So when we say dharma protects us, it means that there is also a necessary participation by all concerned, all stakeholders concerned.
Including the users.
To participate in it and work towards the protection of it.
Yeah.
And then we reap the benefits of the dharma having been protected.
So there, even being knowledgeable of this being the process helps us participate better and hence protect the process.
Correct.
So similarly, at the subtler level, even in terms of value systems, now many people talk of degradation of values. But then that again is looked at as creation. It's a subtle creation. So values also need to be protected and worked upon. So when we understand that there is the material component and the intelligent component. So we being the intelligence, we in terms of collective as well as individual. Anything that we look around in our places, all of that is a product of these two, co-evolution of the material and the intelligence. Working on each other, if you understand this sense. So that's where what enables us to participate in it and succeed in it. That is the core principle of the Mahabharata. So dharmo rakshati rakshitaha means dharma, that which leads to dharma comes from the root word dhr. Dhr means to sustain. So now we are very much talking along the lines of sustainable development, sustainable, living. Sustainability is a huge thing, sustainability development goals of the United Nations. Because otherwise, could there be an idea of unsustainable living? Definitely yes. And we can see that. So much ecological damage. That all is the result of unsustainable lifestyles. And can there be sustainable health? For example, can there be an unsustainable health? Yes, definitely. So when we understand the idea of sustainability, so we see dhr means to sustain. So the idea of sustainable development, sustainable growth, sustainable health, all of this comes under the framework. And that's why understanding these frameworks help us participate in it better, thereby sustaining dharma. So dharmo rakshati rakshita.
And it is popularly said in the Mahabharata that what is there in the Mahabharata is found elsewhere. But what is not there is not found anywhere.
Yeah, that's a huge statement.
That's a huge statement. And so it means that there is something for everybody in the Mahabharata. There's something for children, there is something for youth, there's something for a grihastha, there is something for an aspiring leader, or anybody who's in a position of responsibility, or even a praja, or a normal citizen for that matter. So what is in it for everybody? How is it so? Can you give me some examples?
Yeah, definitely. See, for example, children and students, there are, Mahabharata is, so many stories put together. In fact, what comes to mind for many people are the exceptional role models. So awe-inspiring that they almost seem fantastic. But actually, they are, they can be powerful role models that provide us with inspiration for daily living. That's where children definitely look up to their parents for being role models. And it's not being, not easy. When we grow up, we always look up to our father or, mother. We look up to them and say, hey, I wish to be like them. Then as we grow up, we start seeing, oh, I should have a better role model. That's where for children to grow up properly, they need appropriate role models. Mahabharata provides so many such wonderful role models. And listening to those stories inspires one, fires up one's imagination, by which one aspires to, yes, I should be like that. That inspiration is so very critical for an inspired, living for a child.
In fact, we have two sons. And every time we narrate the story of Arjuna and Drona, it's always inspiring to them. Yeah. The way Arjuna would pay very specific attention to the eye of that bird that is kept on the tree. And whereas others would miss that mark, would look at everything else in the background and the eye. And then Drona would ask them to step aside and then focus on just the eye of the bird. It is so inspiring to young people to focus and pay attention to the goal at hand.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you see that Arjuna does not get stressed out in that sense because he practices day and night. In fact, there is a wonderful scenario where Dronacharya asked the cook not to serve Arjuna
at night. No, when it's dark.
When it's dark, and something happens. That's to cut a long story short. He discovers that he does not need light to put his hand into his mouth, and then he goes out and starts practicing
at night as well,
and learn to use the other senses as well. So such stories can be very inspiring to children because it talks so much about a student life, the respect that Arjuna had for his teacher, the Guru Bhakti that he had. So that the children get a lot of benefit.
So the learnings in terms of concentration and focus, not getting lost or bogged down by apparent difficulties, day and night focusing on practice. Practice makes perfect. It's called abhyasa, by which one succeeds. One works hard, and Arjuna was also known for carrying that hard work very easily. Cool, not stressed out because of hard work. All these are very inspiring stories. Very important role model for students. So children and students, there's so much in the Mahabharata that they can learn from. And similarly, when we move on to grihasthashrama, the married life, the householder's life, grihasthashrama now, most people that we meet, there are bachelor's jokes that go around that mock at grihasthashrama. But in the Indian sense, grihasthashrama is considered exceptionally pure.
Because
which sustains all, everything.
Exactly. The grihasthas are the ones who sustain the society through the upkeep of dharma.
Yeah.
Because the youth are in a certain mood because they are in education.
Yeah, they are focused on themselves.
They are focused on education and getting skilled. But then the Vanaprastha and the Sannyas Ashrama have already finished their duties and are now on their way out of the societal structures. But the grihasthas play a very significant role. But somehow today, grihasthas don't realize that they have such an important role in the society because they are the ones who protect the knowledge, who ensure that the knowledge is available for many generations together.
And they are the ones who bring new members into the society. They sustain, the different members of the society, who are all into their own things, but the grihasthas are the ones who sustain everybody through their swadharma. That's called the concept of swadharma. So for grihasthas as well, there are various challenges that happen in life. There are ups and downs that happen in life. Problems with health, problems with children, growing up that can be, challenging.
And financial, how to manage finances.
Yeah.
And how to manage relationships. It's a very complex thing in Grihastha Dharma. And how to maintain a relationship within the family, outside the family, and balance one's work, professional life, and other things.
And yet not quit.
Not quit,
right?
Yes.
That's very important. Now, most of us, a little stress and we think of quitting. While Grihastha Dharma, as per the Indian approach, you need to be able to bear all that load and be enthusiastic, cheerful, and not quit, because you look at it in terms of not just your own benefit, your family's benefit, and the larger benefit of society.
And in fact, there are beautiful instances in the Mahabharata that highlight the role of grihasthas. If you look at each of the Pandava brothers, each one of them brings unique capability to the family, and they are so devoted to each other. The kind of relationship that exists amongst the brothers is something phenomenal that we would not find probably in many families today.
Yeah.
Because I know of many families where the elder brother wouldn't talk to the younger brother wouldn't talk to the sister, and there's so much split that is happening in the family.
And even more so than that, even divorces.
Divorces, yes.
Which is that's where, for example, in the Mahabharata, there is the beautiful story of Rishi Vasishta and Arundhati. So, Arundhati and Vasishta are considered the ideal couple, which are shown as the role models, because they are yoked by a common theme of dharma. So that's where there is very clear enunciation of the principles of Purushartha. Purushartha means the purpose of human life. Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Kama means pleasure, that which we do for pleasure. And Artha means wealth, that whatever activities we undertake for the purpose of wealth. And Dharma is those activities which we undertake where our work actually feeds into a larger system, where our work is important in terms of the society to function properly, the organization to function properly, or the family to function properly. And then eventually, through appropriate, what we can say, fruition of our desires, we come to a stage where we are free of these, and there is moksha. So this framework is very clearly explained, and as it's applicable to each stage of life. That clarity gives us the necessary strength to weather the various challenges of life. And that's where Grihastha Dharma, by being able to bear the various expectations that are imposed on them by various relationships, by society, by family, and still holding on cheerfully, that requires that clarity. And that clarity, it's very difficult to gain from one's own experience. That's where Mahabharata clearly gives us that clarity, which leads us to success as a grahastha.
Yes.
Because even as a grahastha, it's important to succeed. It's not like we can just quit and walk out. That's not the idea. So there, this kind of clear framework becomes very useful.
So we have looked at the relevance of the Mahabharata for children because it provides a lot of role model stories there, and also for grihasthas. But many people who are watching this channel, it's a wonderful channel that inspires so many people to look at responsibilities in public leadership.
Yeah.
And getting immersed in the Bharata context. So that way, the people who are watching this channel, so for them, what is the message that the Mahabharata has for aspiring public leaders, or who are already in the positions of power, or all have a small sphere of influence in terms of their nearby societies, or who are community leaders, or who are leaders of their own small organizations, probably. So what does the Mahabharata have for these people?
There are exceptional role models that are there in the Mahabharata, which teach appropriate leadership. Because a leader is one who needs, who is looked up to by everyone around them. And hence, what is it that sustains a leader? A leader needs to be capable of handling huge load, of one is expectation and cognitive load as well. Because now we live in very accelerated times. A leader has input from all directions and always a flux.
Yes.
And this can be hugely draining for someone who does not see beyond a near target.
Okay.
It's not just a low-hanging fruit. One needs to be able to sustain or sail through this. One needs a clear, deeper orientation. And that's where role models, like, for example, if we take the example of Bhishma, that's a very classic thing. Bhishma was an exceptional person in the Mahabharata. So he had committed to Duryodhana that he will eliminate 10,000 ratis every day of the war. Okay. By the way, Mahabharata is not about war. Okay, we will come to it later. But Bhishma had guaranteed or made a promise to Duryodhana that he will eliminate 10,000 ratis. Now, rati, that's a war formation where you have cavalry, infantry, elephantry, and those on vehicles or chariots. So those on chariots would have a whole formation which they are leading. So it is almost like leader of a battalion, if we may. And Bhishma as the commander-in-chief has mentioned to Duryodhana that he will eliminate 10,000 ratis. So if we imagine something like 10 hours from sunrise to sunset, because that was the time of the war, you can imagine 10 hours, 10,000 ratis. So 1,000 ratis every hour. That comes to about a rati every few seconds, 3 or 4 seconds. It's mentioned how nobody could see, Bhishma's arm wasn't, or bow wasn't full circle.
Yeah.
Nobody could see when he was picking up the arrows, shooting it, but they could only see the toe.
Like a ceiling fan, once you switch it on in full speed, you just see a circle going around, not the wings.
Yeah.
So Bhishma's arm was like
that.
Full circle.
And imagine his age. So at that age, cheerfully fighting with full vigor and meeting targets. And in the midst of such clamor, it's war field, which can be hugely stressful. And hence he needs to hold his attention no matter what. Such clarity of vision and purpose and holding attention. A leader definitely needs that, because there could be a huge amount of clamor all the while. And there is praise, blame. So some people are praising him, some people are blaming him, and still his objective vision and focus is not lost. And in the midst of this, there is also, for example, its constant movement. So nobody is a sitting duck. So all the time, it's movement in the war field, which is like a lot of bloodshed, and yet focused and being able to deliver, keeping the highest interest of the kingdom in mind. So that is what we call as Bharata first. So when we are loyal, or when we have our identity clear, and identity is a platform for decisive action, and that a leader represents that identity, that space. When we say Bharata, it's an identity. Now many people think that identity is a problem. Identity is not looked at as a problem. For example, a human identity, it's still an identity, by the way. So in the Indian spiritual texts, we are not exactly considered, we are a spiritual being with a human form. So we are considered the Atma, expressing itself through this identity. The Atma can express itself through the identity of a tree or a bacteria, for that matter. Okay, so identity is a means of appropriate expression. So that gives a platform where, within the platform of the identity, that's the kshetra, where we can decisively act for the benefit of those owning up to that identity, those belonging to that identity. And hence, a leader definitely needs to own up the identity so that they can act decisively, which impacts everyone within that identity in a positive manner. And that is not easy, that's like always holding in mind all of them in each decision. So it's mentioned beautifully in the Mahabharata how a leader is like a pregnant woman. A pregnant woman always, any step is always taken with the awareness of the child in the womb, so that nothing affects the child. Likewise, a leader does everything. That is the Bharata first approach.
And in fact, talking about leadership, there's so much mentioned in the Mahabharata about women leadership as well. Right? Because you see, there is a beautiful conversation that happens between Draupadi and Satyabhama.
Yeah, in fact, in the context of the Vanaparva, they are sent out, Maharani Draupadi is insulted badly and sent out to the Vana. And there, what do you feel? Everyone thinks that women are weaklings. Women empowerment has not been given its due in Indian ethos. What do you think that episode carries, illustrates?
So there is this conversation in the Vana between Satyabhama and Draupadi. And Satyabhama asks Draupadi that, see, the Pandava brothers are so devoted to you. So what is the charm that you have casted, or what is the spell that you have casted on them that they're always devoted to you? And Draupadi is a very proud woman. She says, I don't need to cast any spell, or I don't need to do any tantram to make them devoted to me. But the very way I live, the very kind of activities that I engage in, makes them devoted to me. And then she goes on to highlight the kind of activities that she is involved in, the kind of leadership that she brings in the palace or in the kingdom. And she says, how, amongst the Pandavas, including her, she is the only person who knows the amount of money or income that is coming in and the expenditure that is happening.
Wow.
Because the Pandava brothers are busy in their own work, and she is the one who's keeping track of the treasury.
Maybe even now in many Indian families,
yes.
Traditionally, it's the woman of the household who takes care of the finances.
Definitely. And she also says that how when Yudhishthira or any of the Pandava brothers take to an expedition, she is the one who takes care of the arrangements that have to be made, the elephants, the horses, the rishis that accompany the maids that accompany the rishis, and all those arrangements. And she knows all the attendants of the palaces by their names, their families, how many children they have, and she also takes care of the well-being of all those people.
That would go into lakhs of people.
Yeah. And it does not come by just taking an attendance ledger and noting down their name. It means that it's coming from a very personal connect with those people.
So it is almost like then she should be something like a motherly figure in the whole of the kingdom.
Absolutely. And then when she was insulted in the Sabha, that is when, the whole thing went out of hand.
Yeah.
Because she's like the mother. She occupies a very high position in the kingdom, one of the highest positions in the kingdom.
So that would amount to almost like a woman leader of a country being insulted or disrobed in the parliament of another country.
Yeah, a war would definitely break out. It's inevitable.
Yeah, even in modern times, there could be world war for sure.
So that way you see that there are different women characters in the Mahabharata.
Who are very strong.
Be it Satyavati, or be it Kunti Devi, or be it Gandhari, or Ganga for that matter, Draupadi Devi. Each one presents a very high, or even Arundhati Ma for that matter, each one presents a very high possibility for women of today to look at their lives, adapt and adopt. One cannot, we don't live in palaces anymore. We don't live in kingdoms anymore. But we do live in challenging times, the same way as those people lived in challenging times. So there's always something that women can learn from these characters, rather than looking at them as some oppressed figures, which nowhere in the Mahabharata it is. And whenever there is an oppression that is noticed, there is a very severe consequence and a very heavy price that people pay for oppressing any of these people.
Yeah, that also leads me to this observation. It is generally said now by elders that this is Kali Yuga and hence things are like this. But what do you feel, was the nature of other yugas? Were these challenges not present in other yugas?
Every yuga brings its own challenges, but definitely things were a little different that way. If you look at the description of the yugas, you have Satya Yuga, you have Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. And each yuga has its own characteristic, because it is mentioned that how even the sizes and the forms even diminish over these yugas, and the capabilities also diminish. But nevertheless, the grass is never greener on the other side. Each yuga has its own challenges, but then there are leaders who emerge in these challenges and then solve the problems of that society, and then hand over the responsibility to the next yugas for them to proceed ahead with clarity. And we always have we have these Itihasa Purana to guide our lives, and the people who are described in the Itihasa Purana, they had their own Itihasas and Puranas to draw inspiration from and solve problems.
Maybe that's the reason why Swami Vivekananda beautifully said that the greatest benefactor of the people are the ones who take the Itihasa and Puranas to the doorstep of every household. And that is so deep a statement, because now it is hardly acknowledged. And what is studied as history, I clearly remember, in school, it was a parody, because it was all dates and numbers, and we were quizzed only on those, and it would not elicit any emotional response. For example, I clearly remember studying in school, or maybe not even remember studying the history of freedom struggle in India. It was our own people who gave their lives so that we could be free now. We live in free India, independent India now. And that at that time, as a young child with good imagination, that emotional response, that emotional connect was not provided. And it was just some 1947, it was just numbers. It was just names, and it was just some information which we need to just, study for the sake of exams. But that's where, what do you feel is the power of the Mahabharata in terms of eliciting such a response?
Yeah, we are talking about the Mahabharata in such glorious terms, but maybe we just talk about a little bit about the content of the Mahabharata as well. So you have 18 parvas in the Mahabharata, and each parva talks about different stages that the Pandava brothers go through in life. So the Adi Parva talks about the initial part of the births of the various kings and the kings of that lineage. And it starts with the story of Shantanu and Gangama and the birth of Bhishma.
Yeah.
And then,
it's narrated, it's narrated by Ugrashava Sauti, storyteller, a tapasvi storyteller, to tens of thousands of rishis in Naimisharanya.
And then the story proceeds further to the birth of Dhritarashtra and Pandu and that generation. And then to the next generation of the Pandava brothers, the Kauravas, and how the animosity amongst the Kauravas, between the Kauravas and Pandavas, slowly, increases.
Builds up.
What started as small fights as children, jealousy and other things as children, then slowly builds up to sharing of the kingdom, who's going to be in power, trying to kill the Kauravas, trying to kill the Pandavas, and they running to the forest, and then they coming back, and then being refused even an inch of land, and then enticing them to the game of dice, and then eventually sending them to the Vana. So after the Adi Parva is the Sabha Parva, where the grand palace is built for the Pandavas. And then they lose in the game of dice, and then they're sent to the forest, which is the Vana Parva. And they have to live in the incognito for a year, which is Virata Parva. And then begins negotiations right before the war, which is Udyoga Parva. And then we go on to the war, where each one is the commander-in-chief of the army, and the Parvas are named after that. And then
Bhishma, Drona, Karna, and Shalya,
yes,
and Sautika, where the sleeping Upapandavas are butchered mercilessly by Ashwathama. And then comes the Stree Parva, where the women lament, and Gandhari Devi curses Bhagavan Krishna for being the cause of this war. He could have averted this war, but then he reminds Gandhari Devi how she could have averted this war by grooming her son properly, because her son was the cause of the war, Duryodhana.
So it means there is something to learn for mothers as well. Where you need to draw the line in terms of enabling them, at the same time not enabling all the aspects of life.
Yeah. So discipline and love and affection at the same time. So affection at the same time, proper discipline.
Because we do see that Dhritarashtra was blind to many of the actions that Duryodhana was doing, even though he could have stepped and then stopped some of them.
Yeah, he could have placed mid-course corrections, but he did not do that.
And then the war, everybody perishes except a few of them, the Pandava brothers, and the seniors are there. And the seniors eventually take up, Vanaprastha, and then they all.
So there we have the Shanti Parva and Anushasana Parva, where Bhishma instructs Raja Yudhishthira on good governance. So there is a lot to learn from Shanti and Anushasana Parva for leaders.
So if you are an aspiring leader, or if you're an aspiring civil servant, or if you're already in a position of responsibility, then maybe there's a lot to learn from Shanti Parva and Anushasana Parva.
Yeah, UPSC aspirants can really learn a lot.
And there is a lot of good conversations in a question and answer format, where Yudhishthira poses a question that he is facing, an issue that he's facing in the kingdom, and Bhishma shares some solutions to it. And Bhishma also poses some questions. Have you, has these things taken care of? That gives us clues as to, okay, what all a leader has to be mindful of.
So that way, legislature, bureaucracy, and judiciary can, those who aspire to participate in these aspects can definitely learn a lot from, Shanti Parva and Anushasana Parva.
And then
we have the Ashramavasika Parva, Ashwamedika Parva, and the Ashramavasika Parva.
And then eventually the Pandava brothers ascend to heaven, one by one fall, and then Yudhishthira gains access to heaven.
And before then, there is a civil war that in which the Yadavas, Bhagavan Krishna and his lineages are, they
clash with each
other and perish.
Yes. And Bhagavan Shri Krishna also leaves the earth eventually. So all this happens. But one thing that has happened is that, ever since we took up the study of the Mahabharata, owing to all the richness of the content that is provided there, the vast content that is provided there, the 18 chapters, hundreds of characters in the Mahabharata, a story within a story. Many of you would be familiar with the movie Inception, where there's a dream within a dream and dream within a dream. It takes a little while to grasp content. But the Mahabharata presents a very complex narrative with stories within stories. And then the action is somewhere, the consequence happens somewhere else. So you'll have to have the patience to go through the entire storyline to be able to understand the message of what is happening there. So a lot of patience develops, a lot of memory is enhanced through that. And you also relate to the story in a very personal sense because there's so much emotion that is present over there. As he was mentioning, when he read the history books, there's no emotion that is involved because it's all plain. Of course, the teacher is the only one who provided the emotions. We remember our history teachers. They did a good job of presenting the emotions behind those stories, but the book as such did not.
And the content did not lead to vicarious learning. Because what we look at from history is also in terms of vicarious learning. It's not just the information, it's not just the dates. It's more about, that's why dharma is a very central concept. How do we, right conduct, right living? How do we live well? And that if we cannot learn, then it's just a lot of information, but that does not translate into wisdom. And wisdom is what is central to leading a good life, a sustainable life. And that's where, Mahabharata also provides a complex cognitive simulation, environment by which one can vicariously learn all of these complex cognitive skills.
And karyam and akaryam, what is a good thing to do and what is not to be done. All these start becoming clear. It's not black and white, but nevertheless, one learns to navigate through this complex situation and then learns that, okay, every action has a certain consequence and it can get amplified through our own, nature as well. And how we need to be cautious, mindful of the consequence, be inclusive about others whenever we take any decision in life.
Yeah, and that way, what you are, saying helped me understand it in the light of what we can say, developing our sense of assessment and judgment.
Correct.
Because the complex content helps us develop that sense of assessment, which is so critical in life. Because in life, as the situations grow more and more complex, for example, now we live in what is called a VUCA reality. VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Because so much is compressed into every day that there is a lot of volatility. And volatility is not just the stock market. It's in terms of even, what to expect. We are not able to plan ahead for the next year. It's come to that. We do not know what disruptive technology or disruptive pandemic, for that matter, would interrupt or disrupt. So volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity means we are left to a sense of intelligent assessment to navigate this reality. Without a sense of inner balance or intelligent assessment, what to hold on to, that's not clear. So that's where Mahabharata, through this complex, we can say simulation, helps us gain this inner bearing, right? Where inner balance, by which we can navigate complex territory. And that can be done only through this sense of, refined assessment. It's not rules so much. It's not like do this, don't do this. Dharma, adharma, karya, akarya. Yeah? It's not black and white. It's more in terms of developing one's assessment. So anybody in a complex leadership position would be able to understand this. Because all the time you're faced with decisions where it is not just precedent, but it's also in terms of your own assessment. You're free to assess. There are guidelines, but you need to take the call. And that is true of school leaders, of family leaders. Even within a family, you need to lead appropriately. Of larger societal leaders, political leaders, and also individual leadership, where you need to lead your mind in this apparent chaos. And that has to do with cultivating this sense of inner balance and inner assessment. It's your judgment, your call at the end of the day.
And now that we've spoken about the Mahabharata, I've given an overview as well. But there always this question that young people have is that, how is it true that the Mahabharata really happened? So in fact, there are a number of researchers and scholars who are working on uncovering a lot of things about the Mahabharata. So there are some archaeological evidences that are coming out. There are some astronomical evidences that are mentioned in the Mahabharata itself. There are so many references, hundreds of astronomical references that are there in the Mahabharata, and people are running it through simulation software, trying to date the Mahabharata. And there are also lot of evidences that are coming from local legends, some through society as well. So all these, when put together, I'm sure in the coming, as technology develops further and further, I'm sure many of these things would be uncovered.
Yeah, so even something like genomic profiling.
Yeah, genetics is being used as well. So all these dimensions are being used to understand when the Mahabharata happened, if it happened or not, and so many things. So we hope to have more of these conversations with you, and hope you found this interesting, and hope this inspires you to take up a reading of the Mahabharata in whatever way possible and whatever time that you get. Maybe this is the best time, since we are all at home and having some personal time to ourselves. So maybe this is a good time and opportunity to go through the Mahabharata. Take up some questions. We can conclude with a prayer.
Yeah.
Om Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.